The team worked in seamless coordination, their movements fluid and purposeful, as if they had all memorized their roles long ago. Mika's hands moved with precision, tightening bolts and replacing parts with the same focus that had driven her from the very beginning of her career. Despite the growing sense of urgency, there was a calm in her mind. She knew that if she remained steady, the team would follow her lead. Haruki, ever the reliable senior technician, worked beside her, ensuring that all the smaller tasks were taken care of while Mika focused on the critical components of the engine. The crack was now fully repaired, but they couldn't afford to rush any aspect of the work. She double-checked everything: the wiring, the seals, the alignment of the parts. One wrong move could undo all their hard work. "You're doing great, Mika," Haruki said, looking over her shoulder with a reassuring smile. "Thanks, Haruki," she replied, her voice tight but appreciative. She didn't have time for small talk now. They were getting closer to finishing, but there were still so many checks to be done. As the clock ticked down, Mika called for the final round of inspections. The airplane was almost ready to go, but there was still that nagging feeling of doubt in the back of her mind. Could they be sure it was truly safe now? Could she be certain that every last detail had been addressed? "Mika, you're almost there," Haruki said, as though sensing her internal battle. "You've done everything you could, and then some. The team's got your back." Mika nodded but didn't respond. There was no room for doubt. If the flight was going to take off, she had to be completely confident in the work they had done. She walked around the aircraft one last time, her eyes scanning every inch, her mind running through a mental checklist of every part she had just repaired. The captain returned to check on their progress. His face was still serious, but his eyes held a hint of trust. "Mika-san," he greeted, "how's it looking?" "It's looking good. I believe we've fixed the problem," Mika said, her voice unwavering now. "I'll sign off on the final checks, and we should be ready for takeoff as soon as the safety crew clears the aircraft." The captain glanced at the clock. It was cutting it close, but he nodded. "I trust you, Mika. Just don't rush. We'll get it done when it's done." Mika gave him a sharp nod before turning back to the engine. She had done everything by the book, but there was always that small whisper of uncertainty. Could it really be enough? "Haruki, double-check the hydraulic system," Mika instructed, her voice firm. He moved to comply, already knowing what she was thinking. Despite all her confidence, Mika was still wary. This was a massive machine, and one tiny oversight could lead to a catastrophe. She couldn't allow herself to miss anything. As Haruki worked, Mika took a step back and allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought back to the first time she had worked on a plane. How small and uncertain she had felt, struggling to learn the intricacies of something so complex. She remembered the skepticism some of her colleagues had when she first arrived, not because they doubted her abilities, but because a woman in a male-dominated field like airplane maintenance was still a rarity in Japan. But she'd proven herself over and over, earning the respect of her peers one task at a time. Mika's thoughts were interrupted as Haruki approached her with a report. "All systems are clear. Hydraulics are good to go," he said, giving her a quick thumbs up. Her heart swelled with relief. It was finally time. She looked over at the captain, who had been waiting patiently. "Everything's ready. The plane is good to go." The captain's face softened into a smile. "Mika-san, I knew I could count on you. You and your team have done an excellent job. I'll make sure the crew is prepped for departure." Mika watched as the captain walked away, speaking with the crew about the upcoming flight. The tension that had been building for hours began to lift, but it wasn't over yet. There was still one final task, the formal sign-off. Mika grabbed her clipboard and signed off on the necessary paperwork, the sound of her pen scraping across the paper filling the quiet hangar. She handed it over to the operations team, who quickly processed the clearance. The airplane was ready for the skies. As the engine roared to life once again, Mika stood back and watched, her heart swelling with pride. The aircraft slowly began to taxi, and she felt a sense of accomplishment flood through her. It wasn't just a plane taking off, it was her work, her diligence, her resolve that had made this possible. She had a hand in keeping it in the air. "Good job, Mika," Haruki said, clapping her on the back as he joined her at the observation window. "Thanks, Haruki," Mika said, her voice finally softening as she let out a long breath. "I couldn't have done it without you." The airplane began to pick up speed, heading toward the runway. It was a powerful, thrilling sight, one that reminded Mika why she had chosen this path in the first place. as the plane lifted into the air, disappearing into the vast open sky. Mika couldn't help but smile. There was nothing quite like watching a plane she had worked on soar into the horizon, a testament to her skill, her commitment, and the strength of the team she had built around her. But even as she watched the plane take off, Mika knew that her journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new repairs, and new lessons to learn. But that was what she loved about this work. Every day brought something different, something to solve, something to improve, and Mika was ready to face it all, one step at a time. As the airplane climbed higher into the sky, Mika's heart still raced with adrenaline, the sense of accomplishment not yet settling in. There was always a part of her that wanted to stay grounded, watching, waiting just to be sure that everything was truly perfect. But that wasn't her job anymore. Her job was done. The plane was in the air, and all she could do now was trust in the work she had put in the precision and care that had gone into every part of the maintenance process. "Haruki," Mika said after a long pause, her voice quieter now, "do you ever get used to it? The feeling, I mean, watching the planes take off, knowing that you helped make it happen." Haruki gave her a knowing smile. "You don't get used to it. Not really. Every takeoff feels like something special. But that's why we do this job, right? To know that something we worked on is flying in the sky, carrying people safely to their destinations." Mika nodded, her gaze still fixed on the plane as it grew smaller in the distance. It was an incredible feeling, one that never really faded. It was more than just a job, it was a calling. She had always known that even when things got tough or the work seemed endless. "Well," Haruki added, slapping Mika lightly on the shoulder, "you're part of something bigger now. You've earned your place. Everyone sees that." Mika looked at him, her expression softening. "Thanks, Haruki. I don't know what I'd do without you." Haruki chuckled, waving it off. "You'd be just fine, Mika. You've got the skills, the determination. I'm just here to remind you when you're working too hard." Mika smiled at that, though she knew that Haruki was right. She often pushed herself harder than necessary, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. But it was just the way she was. When she set her mind to something, there was no stopping her. Just as she was about to say something else, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Startled, she pulled it out, wondering if it was related to the flight she had just cleared for takeoff. It was a message from the operations manager. "Mika, we've received great feedback from the crew on your work. The repair was flawless." Mika's eyes lingered on the message for a moment, before a small smile appeared on her lips. It was exactly what she needed to hear. "Seems like we did all right," Mika said, showing the message to Haruki. He leaned over to read it, then gave her an exaggerated thumbs up. "I knew you were the best for the job, but you can't keep being so humble about it. You've earned your stripes, Mika." "Maybe," Mika said with a slight laugh, but she couldn't fully let go of the feeling that she could always do more, always push harder. It was part of her, that drive. But Haruki was right too. She couldn't keep doing everything alone. As they stood there watching the plane disappear into the night sky, a voice came over the intercom, calling for all maintenance staff to assemble for a debriefing. It was routine, but Mika had a feeling this meeting would be more than just a standard review. "I guess it's time to face the music," Mika said with a sigh. Haruki raised an eyebrow. "You nervous?" "Not really," Mika replied. "Just curious. I think they'll be pleased. But you never know what they're going to focus on." "Don't worry," Haruki reassured her. "You did the job right. That's what matters most." Mika nodded and followed him toward the conference room. The rest of the team was already assembling, and as Mika entered, the atmosphere was different from what she had expected. There were no stern faces, no reprimands. Instead, the air was filled with a sense of camaraderie and pride. The operations manager, a middle-aged man named Tanaka, stood at the front, his expression unusually warm. "Everyone, gather around," Tanaka said as he began to speak. Today's flight wasn't just about getting a plane off the ground. It was about working together and ensuring that every detail was covered. "And Mika," he paused, glancing at her with a smile, "she led us through that. Despite the challenges, she ensured that the plane was ready for takeoff, and she did so without hesitation. Mika, thank you for your professionalism and your dedication." Mika felt a flush of pride in her chest, and the rest of the team began clapping, their faces filled with admiration. The compliment, though expected from her colleagues, still felt surreal. It wasn't often that she received this kind of praise. She stood, humbled, yet grateful. "Thank you, everyone," Mika said, her voice steady. It was a team effort. We all did our part to make sure everything went smoothly. Haruki's voice rang out from the back of the room. She's being modest. It was her effort that got us here today. Mika smiled sheepishly, but Tanaka wasn't done. I've been around long enough to know that we don't often get feedback like this. But I want to emphasize one thing, Tanaka continued, his voice growing more serious. This is a reminder to all of us that we are not just fixing machines. We're keeping people safe. Every job we do has the potential to save lives. And Mika, today you proved that we are all capable of greatness, if we hold ourselves to the highest standards. There was a moment of silence, the weight of his words settling in. Mika had heard these kinds of speeches before, but it never hit quite like it did now. This wasn't just about being a great mechanic or a capable engineer. This was about purpose. She wasn't just working with machines. She was working to protect people's lives, to ensure their safety every single time a plane took to the skies. It was a responsibility that made her heart swell, one that kept her grounded in a way that nothing else could. As the meeting wrapped up and everyone began to file out, Haruki sidled up beside Mika, a knowing smile on his face. "Feels good, huh?" he asked. "It does," Mika replied, a sense of warmth spreading through her chest. "It really does." But as she glanced at the clock, she noticed the time. It was already late, and there was no telling when her next shift would begin. As much as she wanted to relax, there would always be something more to do. Always another challenge on the horizon. But for now, she had earned a brief moment of peace. After the debriefing, Mika felt an unexpected wave of relief wash over her. It wasn't just the success of the repair, nor the praise from her colleagues, it was the fact that they had all worked together, each playing a crucial part in ensuring the safety of the flight. The camaraderie in the room had been palpable, and Mika felt a sense of belonging that, for the first time in a long while, made her realize just how much she valued the people around her. Haruki clapped her on the back as they walked out of the meeting room together. "So, what's next, Mika? Are you finally going to let yourself have a break?" Mika smirked, feeling a little lighter now that the pressure had eased. "I wouldn't be surprised if they already have another job lined up for us. This place never stops." Haruki laughed, a deep, genuine sound. "You're right about that. But hey, you've earned a moment to breathe. You did a hell of a job today. Maybe you should take a little time for yourself." Mika paused at the doorway of the hangar, considering his suggestion. She didn't remember the last time she'd taken a break, not really. She had always been the kind of person who kept pushing, who always looked for the next challenge. But Haruki was right. Maybe, just maybe, she could step back for a bit. "I don't know." Mika trailed off, her gaze wandering to the planes lined up in the hangar, waiting to be inspected. She couldn't help but feel that familiar tug, that need to get her hands back on the machinery to fix, to perfect. "Look," Haruki said, leaning in with a knowing smile, "the job will still be here tomorrow, but you don't get many chances to just step back and relax. Take it, you've earned it." Mika thought about it for a moment longer, then let out a soft sigh. Okay, I'll take a break, but only if you promise to not let me back in here for at least a few hours." Haruki chuckled. "Deal." Mika grabbed her jacket and headed toward the hangar exit, her mind still buzzing with everything she had accomplished today. The feeling of success was still fresh, but a part of her wondered if she could have done even more, if there was something she had missed in the rush to fix the plane. It was a typical thought for Mika, always pushing, always wondering if she could have done better. She stepped outside into the cool evening air, the sounds of the bustling airport fading behind her. The sky above was clear, with just a hint of stars beginning to show through the fading light of dusk. For a moment, she simply stood there, taking in the quiet, feeling the weight of the day slowly lift. The phone buzzed in her pocket again, pulling her back to reality. She checked it, half expecting it to be another work-related message. But this time, it wasn't. It was a text from her younger sister, Emmy. "Mikani, how's your day? I made your favorite for dinner tonight. Come over when you're free." Mika smiled softly at the message. Emmy was always the one to pull her away from the endless cycle of work, the one who reminded her that there was life outside the hangar, outside the grind. Mika's family had always been supportive, but Emmy had a way of making Mika feel like there was still a world outside of planes and repairs, one where she could simply be a sister, a daughter, and not just an engineer. Mika quickly typed a reply, "I'm free now. I'll be over in 30 minutes." She slid her phone back into her pocket and started walking toward the parking lot, her pace lighter than it had been all day. The thought of a warm meal and a night spent with her family brought a sense of comfort she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Maybe Haruki was right. A break was exactly what she needed. 30 minutes later, Mika arrived at her sister's apartment. As she stepped inside, the delicious scent of homemade food greeted her. Emmy was busy in the kitchen, humming to herself as she stirred a pot on the stove. "I'm here," Mika called out, hanging her jacket by the door. Emmy turned around, her face lighting up with a bright smile. "Mika ni, you made it! I was starting to wonder if you were going to be too busy with work again." "Just about," Mika replied, chuckling as she made her way into the kitchen. "But I couldn't resist when you said you made my favorite." Emmy grinned, setting the spoon down and pulling two plates from the cupboard. "I know, you're impossible to resist when food's involved." Mika laughed and sat down at the small dining table, feeling the weight of the past few hours slowly melt away. For a moment, there was nothing on her mind except the simple pleasure of being with her sister, enjoying a meal and the warmth of home. As they ate, they talked about everything and nothing. Emmy told Mika about her day, about a new project she was working on at school, and Mika shared a little about her work, though she didn't go into the details. Emmy didn't need to know the stresses or the challenges Mika faced in the hangar. Instead, they talked about their childhood, about memories of their parents, and the little moments that made them laugh. For the first time in a while, Mika allowed herself to just be present in the moment, to enjoy the time she had with Emmy. It was rare for Mika to slow down, but tonight it felt right. There would always be work waiting for her, always another challenge to face. But for now, it was enough to be here, to feel the comfort of family around her. After dinner, they sat on the couch, sipping tea and continuing their conversation. The sun had set completely, and the city outside was alive with the sounds of the night. Mika felt a sense of peace, something she hadn't realized she needed so much. The world beyond the hangar, beyond the planes and the repairs, had a way of grounding her. Just as Mika finished her tea, her phone buzzed again, pulling her back into the reality of her job. She checked the message, and her stomach tightened. It was from the operations manager. "Mika, we've got a new job lined up. A critical engine replacement. We need you on this ASAP." Mika sighed, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle back onto her shoulders. She glanced over at Emmy, who was watching her with a knowing look. "You have to go back, don't you?" Emmy asked softly. Mika hesitated, her eyes meeting her sister's. "Yeah, it looks like it. But I'll be back as soon as I can, I promise." Emmy nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "I know, you always keep your promises." Mika smiled back, a sense of gratitude for Emmy filling her heart. She quickly stood up, gathering her things. "I'll be back before you know it," Mika said, giving her sister a quick hug before heading to the door. As she drove back to the hangar, the weight of the work ahead settled back into her thoughts. But she knew that this was part of the job, part of who she was. She was needed. The work was never done. But maybe, just maybe, there would be another quiet moment soon. As Mika drove back to the hangar, the familiar hum of the car engine filled the quiet space, giving her time to think. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard. It was already late. But the world of aviation never stopped. There was always something waiting, something more to be done. She couldn't afford to slow down for too long, not with the responsibility she carried. The hangar was as busy as ever when she arrived. Her colleagues were already at work, prepping the tools, reviewing schematics, and preparing for the critical engine replacement. The moment she walked in, Haruki spotted her from across the room. "You ready for this?" he called out, his voice full of energy. Mika nodded, feeling the weight of the task at hand. Always. The engine replacement would be a tough job, requiring precision, focus, and teamwork. But Mika was ready. She had proven time and again that no challenge was too big, and this was no exception. She gathered her team and quickly set the plan in motion, guiding them through each step with the same careful attention to detail that had earned her the trust of her peers. As the night wore on, the hours stretched longer than expected, but Mika's determination never wavered. She worked alongside her colleagues, troubleshooting problems, ensuring everything was functioning properly. There was a feeling of quiet confidence in the air, knowing that they were all working together to get the job done. Finally, after hours of hard work, the engine replacement was complete. The plane was ready for the next phase of its journey, and Mika allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They had done it. Once again, they had kept the skies safe. As Mika stood outside the hangar, watching the plane being moved out for its final check, she took a deep breath. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Emmy. "Hello, dear friends. Today, let's make a chocolate cake. First, prepare flour, cocoa powder, baking powder, salt, eggs, butter, and other ingredients. Mix them together and knead them into a fine dough. Next, let the dough rise until it becomes fluffy and soft. Then, scoop the cake batter into a baking pan and add the pre-made stuff. Finally, when the sweet cake comes out of the oven, exuding its tempting aroma, everyone gathers around to enjoy it together. The joy in their hearts is hard to express in words. Come and try making your own chocolate cake.